publication. One of those components, whether you want to stand out in addition to your scores, or if you want to make up for a limitation on your score, is to get good publications done, is to get research. There are different ways by which people do this. One traditional way is doing a research fellowship or spending some time in the US doing research at an academic institution. Those opportunities are available, but they're also very hit or miss. You could go to a place and get very good networking and match with the right people and get great publications and really boost your CV. But you could also end up in a place where you spend your money because not all these positions are paid and you don't get a whole lot out of that year. And a year is a lot of time in a career. So that's one possibility of research fellowship. What I focus on and what I apply to my career, and getting to your question, what I teach today is the ability to do strong research independently. Wherever you are in the world, as long as you know how to speak English fairly well, you could do systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And if people know this, meta-analysis are on top of the pyramid of evidence. They're really good publications. I've applied this very successfully in my career, and it's been one of the key factors that helped me to match later on at Hopkins and Harvard. But that's all available.
Attention all international medical students and graduates. Are you looking to improve your residency competitiveness and achieve your dream program match? Look no further. Introducing the 2023 IMG Roadmap course, the online program that will boost your personal and professional growth. This comprehensive course offers live cohort-based coaching from a seasoned expert, me, along with personalized feedback, templates, and even demos. You'll leave with a solid understanding of your personalized IMG journey and the skills you need to enhance it. You'll ditch the overwhelm, and the best part, you can learn at your own pace from anywhere in the world. Whether you're a first-year medical student or a graduate seeking concise, practical coaching to improve your CV, this is the perfect investment for a successful career in the US. The IMG Roadmap is here. Be the first to know when the doors open in April of 2023. Sign up right now at drninaloom.com/waitlist. Again, that's drninaloom.com/waitlist. The IMG Roadmap is the only podcast dedicated to coaching international medical graduates and success blueprints for this unique pathway. I am Dr. Nina Loom, your host, a previous IMG turned hospital medicine physician, healthcare administrator, speaker, and coach. I empower, encourage, and equip you with actionable steps that you can take towards the residency position of your dreams. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IMG Roadmap podcast. Today's guest is an IMG turned cardiologist with so much more to his name and diplomas and degrees that I would want him to introduce himself to you personally. Welcome, Dr. Cardoso, to the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Dr. Lum. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Rhanderson Cardoso. I'm a cardiologist today at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital. I graduated medical school in Brazil, where I'm originally from, and then I came to the U.S. about 10 years ago now. I did internal medicine training at the University of Miami. I was also a chief resident there. And then I went on to Johns Hopkins for a cardiology fellowship, followed by an imaging fellowship at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School. And then I stayed on as faculty. It's been about a year or so that I've been on faculty here as a clinical cardiologist, and I'd spend my time doing academic medicine now, doing clinical work, research, and then teaching the fellows, the residents as well. So it's really an honor to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation.
No, it's my pleasure to have you. I think a lot of IMGs would be delighted to know that they are listening to someone who is working at a world-renowned hospital. One, because we all have the dream of coming to the United States or coming back home to the United States for those IMGs that are US persons or citizens. And we think certain institutions are far-fetched. that the research is beyond what we could ever dream of, such as working or around Harvard. And so it will be a great inspiration for those that are listening to us and wondering about what the future holds for them. So it's my pleasure to have you. So we'll get right into it because we have several questions that we want to get answered. We want to be able to highlight, your pathway and help other people get inspiration that their goals are possible. So can you share with us what that match journey was like for you, Rhanderson, when you first, maybe moved from Brazil, or maybe you started while you were in Brazil? I don't know. So you tell me.
Yeah, I started dreaming about this process and coming to the US very early on in medical school. I remember I was a second year medical student when I found out about ECFMG and about the possibility of coming to the US. And I spent about 2 years in medical school. In Brazil, where I'm from, it's 6 years medical school, like a lot of countries in the world. So I spent second through fourth year just trying to take my time making this decision, pondering about what was the best option for my career and my life, really. And then ultimately at the end of fourth year, I decided to embark on this journey, to start this journey. And then I started studying for the steps. And I did my step 1 in early fifth year medical school. Later in that same year, I did step 2, and I did a couple of observerships in the US. And I finished medical school there with pretty much everything ready to apply. At that time, it was kind of unique to do that. There weren't a lot of people, at least in Brazil at that time, and before widespread availability of, social media and Instagram and people who help IMGs like yourself. I honestly didn't have as much information as is available today. So in looking back, I actually made a few mistakes in my application. I applied to a few programs only. I had good scores, but I didn't have research, for example. So if I were to rate my application back then, I would rate it as a fair application, not really outstanding. But I did match. I matched at the University of Miami. And then from then on, obviously, once you're in the system, let's put it that way, then really you start getting more and more opportunities. Then I figured out how to match into better and better programs, and we can talk about that later on as well. But that's the summarized version of my match process. I basically did the bare minimum with good scores that I had, and then I did the rotations. I did 2 rotations, got my letters of recommendations still during medical school. And then I didn't have a lot of research, but when I applied, I applied to a few programs. I got 3 interviews and then ultimately matched at University of Miami.
Yeah. So, lots to unpack there. Absolutely. But let's get into it. It's been several years since the scores. I've dissociated from my scores. So do you mind sharing what those numbers were, just to give the listener a perspective of what maybe all these programs were looking at when they looked at your portfolio? And even a range is fine if you can't remember the numbers.
No, that's totally fine. I believe I scored 248 on step 1. At that time, if I remember this correctly, it was about 90th percentile or 92nd, something like that. I may be a little bit off on that, but it was a good score. And then I did in the mid 260s on my step 1. I can't remember on my step 2 CK, sorry. So step 2 CK in the mid 260s, also a good score. And I do think that those were important points in my application at that time. I do share this advice with all the people who ask me about the process. Like you said, I've myself been a bit dissociated from the application system to the US, but I know this remains true, which is like the step, and nowadays just the step 2 CK, in my opinion, is an objective parameter by which you get compared with other people. It's inevitable. So it's your opportunity, and it's the same test for everyone who's applying. So it's your opportunity really to add some value to your application. And it's obviously not the only determinant, but I do think it's an area where applicants have to really spend their time and make sure that things go right.
I agree 100%. I think that with scores, it's once you have a good score, you open up the door of possibility. And even if you get a few number of interviews, when it comes to fellowship, you've learned a little bit more about the system at that point. It only continues to pacify your way through the system. However, if you don't have those great scores, then you have to seek other ways to make your presence more meaningful, whether it's in how you present yourself at rotations, gathering all these extracurricular activities, research, and the likes. But I agree with you 100%. And you already went ahead and actually cited some things that you would do differently, such as your strategy with your application, and also maybe applying to a few more programs, or even just getting a general, be more informationally equipped with what to do, which when I was applying as well in 2011, 2012, nobody was doing this as well. Like nobody was blogging or podcasting about what you could do. And, I don't even know, there was no Instagram then, I don't think, to be able to, see what other people are doing. I'm sure Twitter was available, but I wasn't on there. So I think it's a great thing what I do now, but I also know that you are in the same space as well, with teaching on research as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I just want to echo your words just now. When I was a chief resident at the University of Miami, I participated in the selection process, or the committee, let's say, to select new residents. And I noticed there's a lot of people going through like great lengths to try to make up, let's say, for a low score. And that's a situation you want to avoid if you haven't taken your steps yet, or you haven't taken your tests. You definitely want to avoid that situation. You want to add these things on as an add-on to bring value, but not to really supplement a weakness, let's put it that way. Again, if you still have that door open, if you haven't taken this test yet. If you have taken it and you've gotten a low score, there's obviously a way around it, but then you really have to take that road. You have to make it up with trying to be extraordinary in the other components of your application. One of those components, whether you want to stand out in addition to your scores, or if you want to make up for a limitation on your score, is to get good publications done, is to get research. There are different ways by which people do this. One traditional way is doing a research fellowship or spending some time in the US doing research at an academic institution. Those opportunities are available, but they're also very hit or miss. You could go to a place and get very good networking and match with the right people and get great publications and really boost your CV. But you could also end up in a place where you spend your money because not all these positions are paid and you don't get a whole lot out of that year. And a year is a lot of time in a career. So that's one possibility of research fellowship. What I focus on and what I apply to my career, and getting to your question, what I teach today, is the ability to do strong research independently. Wherever you are in the world, as long as you know how to speak English fairly well, you could do systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And if people know this, meta-analysis are on top of the pyramid of evidence. They're really good publications. I've applied this very successfully in my career, and it's been one of the key factors that helped me to match later on at Hopkins and Harvard. But that's all available. You have to learn a method, and that's what I teach in my teaching project that you mentioned. It's called the Meta-Analysis Academy, and I teach doctors and medical students from Brazil and all over the world how they can apply this same method in their career and boost their CV, let's say for residency, for fellowship, or really for anything else in their career.
I love that you do that work now, and because obviously I agree with, again, everything you said. Like, I was a chief resident in my residency program as well. And it made a difference when we saw applications where students had done some kind of publication, because it just tells you that this person is, one, committed to the specialty that they're interested in. And two, they're really trying to seek answers to everyday questions that physicians in that specialty may have. And then more so just for that street credibility in medicine. The more publications you have, automatically people give you the credibility of, whether it's being an academician or being somebody that is trustworthy. It just comes with a lot of street cred as well in the medical field. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because researchers are innately smart, whatever the case may be. So there's just so many angles you can look at it, as far as like using research to maybe boost a great score, or using it as a way to, leverage a poor score. However, in addition to that, as you mentioned, there's so many other aspects. There's a networking aspect, there's the score, which I always encourage everyone. If you haven't started, do it right the first time. Like, I cannot emphasize that. One of the biggest concerns I get from IMGs every day in my inbox is I have a low score. What do I do? And if you have that opportunity to make a difference, please do so. And if you did poorly on step 1, please, for step 2 CK, really hit the mark. Well, now step 1 is no longer a score, so you're really left with only step 2, but hit the mark. And if you have the chance to do step 3 to prove a point, go for it. So let's talk a little bit about your sort of, challenges that you experienced along the way. Because I'm sure as an IMG, like, were you like a visa applicant, non-visa applicant? What was that process?
Yeah, sure thing. A lot of challenges along the way, as is common for us IMGs. One thing I do want to say, I forgot to mention in the beginning, I already mentioned the names Johns Hopkins, Harvard Medical School a couple of times, Brigham and Women's. I just want to add that, of course, the opinions that I share here are only my own and don't necessarily reflect the opinion of these institutions. There's about the visa. Yes, I am a visa applicant. I'm not a citizen or a green card holder yet. I matched and did my residency with a J1 visa. So the challenges along the way are pretty common for the J1 visa holders. I had a particular one where I did a very long residency. I did 3 years of medicine, then 1 year of chief, and then 3 years of cardiology fellowship. And the clock expired for me on the 7 years of the J, and I wanted to do additional training in cardiac imaging. So I had to apply for an extension, which is possible, but for a 2-year program, because I did a multimodality imaging training. So that's a question I had at the time, and I had a hard time finding the answer. Like, is it possible to extend for 2 years? I hope there aren't that many people listening that are crazy enough like me to do 9 years of residency and fellowship. But if you are wondering about that, it is possible. You can extend your J visa for a 2-year. It can do it once. But aside from that, one challenge that I'm dealing with right now is what you do after the J. I took on a position in an academic institution, and a waiver is not possible here. So I'm now on an O visa, which is a separate topic for discussion. But I do plan on eventually applying for a waiver and of the 2-year home requirement, or going back to Brazil. Those are 2 possibilities for me still. Now, I do want to talk about one very specific challenge that may apply to a lot of the listeners, which is the difficulty that I had in the beginning of my career to do research. I was a first-year resident at the University of Miami, and obviously working 70, 60, 80 hours a week, and very busy, but I didn't have time to do research, but I knew I wanted to do research to match into a strong cardiology program. And then I tried the usual approach, which is to ask the cardiology faculty. My interest was cardiology. So I asked the faculty for, research opportunities. I'd love to work with you on research and so forth. And I had limited success with that. They're always very busy too. There's a lot of learners, a lot of residents who want to learn from them. So I had a limited success, but then I learned this method. I learned systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And not only did that allow me to publish, but it allowed me to make the connections that were really helpful for me during my career. Because once you know how to do the research, whether it's because you do know meta-analysis or because you know how to do epidemiology, you know how to do statistics, like once you have the method and you can show autonomy in doing research, then it's easy to make research collaborations. Then people want to work with you. Then you will find mentors will want to work with you and so forth. So that's something I really encourage. It's something that really transformed my career. It's the ability to get things done on my own. And then that opened the door for collaborations. I found great mentors, people who coached me, who helped me advance my career, ultimately landing that fellowship position in Hopkins, which was really, really important to me.
No, absolutely. I think that is, I appreciate you, first of all, being vulnerable and open to speak about, challenges, because I think a lot of times it's when I have guests on the podcast, a lot of our listeners sometimes may feel so disconnected because they're like, no, it's easy for you to say that now because you're an attending and life is great. But it's important that we realize that every single person that I bring on this podcast, for the most part, that is an IMG, has faced 1 or 2 challenges that you can very well relate with. Now, maybe you can't relate with having a 260 on your step exam, but it doesn't mean that you don't stand a chance, right? But maybe you've had a visa like myself and Rhanderson here, and you can see that no matter what, it's possible to still attain high level education, get your residency done, your fellowship, and still get a job. There's a way out, basically, is where I'm heading to. There is a way out. And no matter what challenge you're facing today, you're not alone. You're not going to be the first person to experience it. You probably wouldn't be the last. And hopefully you can turn around and help the person behind you who's going to have similar challenges. And just, I guess, a word for you, like going through the waiver process, I did that. It's not bad. It's not bad. It all works out at the end of the day. So I have no doubts that you will figure it out. If you were able to figure out a 2-year extension on your J1, then I'm pretty sure figure out the way. So let's talk about a little bit more about, your sort of tips, recommendations for applicants, maybe, because you did so many different applications, internal medicine, then cardiology, then fellowship, subspecialty training as well, and imaging and such. What are, looking at those 3 different levels of applications that you've had to do, what are some, summary, like what's a summary of your recommendations as what you think would be maybe best practice methods for IMGs to apply?
Yeah, there are some general rules that I think apply along the way. So one of them we already talked extensively about, but I just want to highlight it again. First of all, is the big major barrier is getting in the door in the first place, is getting into first residency, into residency. And in that sense, I think the score in the step 2 CK is really important. I just want to put that out there. Number 2, have something else added on to that, especially as these residencies get more and more competitive, especially if you're trying to apply for a competitive specialty. So that's something extra. The easiest way in my mind is strong research, but there could be other things. You could be a unique person in doing like leadership activities and volunteer work that's really meaningful and stuff like that. And then another helpful tip, I think, is to really get good or improve and try to develop your communication skills and interview skills. I think whatever you're going to do, whether it's a job application later on, a fellowship or residency, an interview is going to be part of the process. And obviously there are many things to comment on interviewing. Not that I consider myself particularly good at it, but I do think that one general tip that helps us a lot is to have a good story to tell, in the sense of trying to connect your application, whatever they see in the paper, with what is it that you want to do in this next step of your career. I think if you're able to sell a good story, a genuine one, not one that's made up, but like whoever it is, like that you can connect what they see on the strengths in your CV with where you want to go in your career, whether it's some research that you've done previously and you want to advance that in this new position that you're applying to, or whether it's because you've done really strong clinical work and you just want to be the best clinician that there is, or if you've worked in medical education and you're applying for an academic program and they value that and you're able to highlight that in your conversations with the interviewers. So I think if you're able to connect your past and your future and be specific, people can really relate to that, and that goes a long way. They'll remember that when they're sitting in the meetings and then talking about your application, let's put it that way.
Look at you. I'm so proud of you for listening until the very end. And because of that, you deserve a reward. And I want you to go right now to drninaloom.com and download any of my free ebooks, whether it's for electives or clinical rotations, or even just whatever trials come your way as you navigate your IMG journey. Stay tuned for another episode coming up next.